if you standardize herbs, which costs more for a little vendor to make sure that the same amount of green tea extract is in one pill, in one batch, in one pill, and the next batch is all standard. Well, that's more expensive to do. And so every time you do this stuff, you make things more expensive. Well, what do you have? You have a situation of more and more people out of work, and more people on food stamps, and so forth and so on. So it's always an encumbrance, more of an encumbrance on the people every time you do this. So what's going on? Okay, so basically to make a bottle, let's say a bottle of 100 vitamin C, $15 rather than what it should be, is what we believe is the object of all this. Okay, and of course the drug companies like it because then the expense of the vitamins would be more competitive with the drug expense.
Well, isn't part of Codex Alimentaris, the nature of it is to retract the dominion from the consumers to select their herbs and their supplements and turn it over to the medical profession where all these things have to be prescribed? Is that or is that not part of it?
Well, that's one aspect, but primarily the upfront thing would be to standardize everything. And so when you standardize everything, you make everything more expensive. And by making it more expensive, you take it out of the hands of more people. And you're right, though. It's going to have, in 1993, for that, they tried to put everything on prescription, didn't they, in the United States?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they tried to put vitamins on prescription.
They just
We're going to have a whole show on that. Let's not get into that anymore, but that is a threat. Right. And so the more you have government intervention trying to standardize everything, it's going to drive the price of everything up, of course, right? It's just like if you take the lead out of all the toys or make sure every toy that's resold at a let's say a yard sale is lead-free, right? You're putting that encumbrance on that little yard sale, aren't you?
Sure.
And you can't, you might as well not sell it because you could be possibly selling something that has some lead in it. Follow me? It gets to be nuts, and it gets to be very expensive.
Talk about Silent Clots. That's a fabulous book. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. James Privitera has written the book Silent Clots, Life's Biggest Killers. This is a big revelation on the discovery of a clot. So many people die of silent clots. Talk about it. What made you write this book?
Well, I saw that a lot of people who came in and had chest pain and had headaches and cancer had excess clotting and other problems too, other chronic conditions like arthritis. And I realized there's a lot of literature out there, but as far as the emergency rooms go and as far as the general doctors, they weren't really evaluating for people for excess clotting.
How do doctors evaluate for clotting at this point?
That's a mess, and I'm going to point out why. Okay, let's talk about an emergency room doctor. I'll talk about some actual cases. Emergency room doctor comes in, and he has chest pain. And I say, I look at him and say, Bob, yeah, you got angina? He says, no, I have arthritis. I said, well, why do you think you have arthritis? He says, well, as an ER doctor, I had all the tests to exclude any problems with my heart, and everything came back normal. EKG, stress test, echocardiogram, all came back normal, so I don't have any excess clotting. I said, okay. So I looked at his blood, and of course he had a big clot, and we gave him some fish oil, and 10 minutes later, his clots were gone, and his chest pain was gone. I said, sorry, you have angina due to excess clotting, okay? I gave him a picture of his clots, took a Polaroid. So he says, well, that's great, Doc. I'm going to take this back to my emergency room people and administration, and I'm going to inculcate this into my angina workup. I said, great. So he went back there, and he says, hey, I have angina. I don't have arthritis. That was a wrong diagnosis. And I want to inculcate this dark field evaluation for blood, for clotting, into my practice. And they said, sorry, it's not protocol. And that's about like saying that digging a ditch, if you're if you're a ditch digger, using a shovel to dig a ditch, right, is not protocol. How absurd is that? Okay, and that's the bottom line. It's so ridiculous to say that. So that's what happened. And then, as you know, recently, my bookkeeper, Pat, she went, in the weekend, she had chest pain, went into the hospital. After $15,000 or $11,000 of tests, they evaluated that her chest pain. The cardiologist looked at her and said, "Your heart is not your problem." So they told her maybe try some antacids. Well, she came in Monday morning with pain on her left side, and I said, "Well, let's look at your blood." She said, "Well, nothing's working." So I looked at her blood.
Now, when you say, wait a minute, when you say I looked at her blood, tell us what you did.
We're looking under the microscope, looking at her blood under dark field microscopy, saw she had clotting, okay, gave her fish oils just like the other doctor story, and same thing, her pain went away, her clots went away in 10, 15 minutes. And so no problem, see, but so this is, how many times is this happening throughout the whole world? See, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Because it's not expensive. That test would be, for a patient, is like $40, okay? So cheaply we can evaluate and treat, and also migraines, and also clots associated with cancer, clots associated with arthritis, asthma.
You mean there's a whole panel of different types of clots?
Well, they're the same clots, but I mean these same clots are associated with all chronic degenerative diseases. Okay? There's more. In other words, the word inflammation comes up. So inflammation and clotting go together. The clotting is part of the inflammatory process.
Is it a different paradigm, or has this been around for a long time?
Well, it's been around for a long time. It's just that I noticed that nobody's really writing about it, or kind of nobody's putting it all together, so we kind of put it together, and we taught doctors how to, to get this microscopic system, and we taught them, they'd come here and we'd learn, they'd learn how to do it and go out and do it in our practice, but still most doctors do not do this.
Why? Why?
That's a good question. Is it a conspiracy because they want more people to have heart attacks and strokes? Well, I hope not. But whatever it is, I'm going to get into the cancer issue in a minute, because it reminds me of the same kind of thing. Meaning, let's talk about, it's nuts, isn't it, that here's this doctor, he's an emergency room doctor, and they told him, no, you can't use the dark field, which used to be used for syphilis evaluation. You can't use it to evaluate people to see if they have excess clotting.
Because it's unfamiliar? Or it's not standardized procedure?
But it's been around for a long time, the dark field. That's what I said. They used it for evaluation of syphilis, which is an old-fashioned disease. So every emergency room has the same equipment, basically, that I have. Okay? In other words, I went into Pomona Valley Hospital, and one of my lawyers had a stroke. I looked at his blood with their microscope and saw excess clotting, and I said, he needs heparin because he has excess clotting. Well, same old thing. They didn't do it because it wasn't protocol.
What is heparin?
I'm on the staff there, and I couldn't convince the neurologist or the internist to do it.
So what happened?
He went on to die. See, what I'm saying is that, it's like this wall of protocol, right? It's nonsense, but that's the way they treat you. So getting into the cancer modality thing, there's studies on, for example, breast cancer that were done at John Wayne Hospital. 663 women were evaluated and found that a biopsy for breast cancer is a bad thing.
I've heard that biopsies actually activate metastasis.
Here's the numbers. Yes, you're very true. That's very true. What happens is there's up to a 50% spread if you do a core biopsy in a breast. Now, so I've done this with patients. So the patient goes to the doctor and says, I've got a lump, but I want you to do an excisional biopsy, meaning a tiny lumpectomy. And the doctors fight this. They say, no, it's not protocol. Protocol is to do a biopsy. But doctor, here's the evidence. The evidence is it was done at John Wayne Hospital, and a 663 patient study showed there's up to a 50% spread of breast cancer if you do this. Nope, it's not protocol. So finally,